picture-in-picture over the top of it.
Oh, okay.
It's bizarre. What's not bizarre is the ShopNotes Podcast, which is starting right now. I'm your host, Phil Huber, joined by Logan and John. This is episode number 228, giving you an update of all things in the Woodsmith Popular Woodworking and ShopNotes world. Thanks for listening, everybody. I want to give a shout out to our sponsors. This episode of the ShopNotes Podcast is sponsored by Harvey Industries. Good enough is not good enough. See all of our new tools at harveywoodworking.com. All right. Ordinarily, at this point, I would read a bunch of comments from previous episodes, but there really weren't that many.
I don't know. I got called the wokest.
Yeah. No, a snowflake.
A snowflake.
Sorry,
That's what it was. I was called a snowflake.
No, I don't think it is. I think by context, I don't think they meant what you think they meant. They're not saying that you're like a crystallized piece of like moisture in the air. They're saying you're like really weak and vulnerable.
I was going to go with white and beautiful, but
yeah. I mean, we know that.
Yeah. Huh.
I mean, the people that don't watch it on YouTube don't know that, but
that's true.
Right.
I got called out too. They said that like I had disappeared for a month and that I was at Disney World.
Which is not inaccurate.
Right. Well, what was inaccurate is that they said that I was using my kids as an excuse to go back to Disney World, which is inaccurate because everybody knows I would go to Disney World without my kids.
And you have.
Yeah, and I have.
Right.
And I'm not making any excuses about it. So, I mean, I got a bag packed right now. If there's a Disney World emergency, I got a go bag. I can be on a plane in 15 minutes.
I mean, if there's one thing that anything has taught us these last few years is you have to be prepared for all sorts of emergencies.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep. When it all goes down, you know where I'm going.
Right.
So.
All right. So there you are. Looking for questions, comments, and smart remarks. You can put them on the comments section on our YouTube channel or send us an email, woodsmith@woodsmith.com. Yeah.
But I think we definitely appreciate the smart remarks the most.
Right.
That's what we're here for. That's what fuels us.
Sometimes by sheer entertainment value and sometimes by rage. So what we'd like to know is for any other woodworkers out there who travel extensively to Disney World is what are the best woodworking places to go to in Disney where you're going to see the best stuff?
Geppetto's Workshop.
Right.
Yeah, I have seen on Facebook or somewhere there's a guy that used to work for Disney World carving all the signs. You know what I'm talking about. You've seen him, Logan.
Yeah, he drives me nuts. Starts every post with, "I'm a former Disney artist."
Yeah. I don't want to brag,
got it.
But
yeah, we got it.
I believe they're called Imagineers.
Now they are. They weren't back when he started.
All right. There you are.
Now that we've got that out.
Yep. Whew. All right. Yesterday in the mail, a brand new issue of Popular Woodworking landed in my mailbox. So I was thinking that we'd start today's episode with Logan kind of talking about what's in that episode or what's in that issue.
I don't remember.
This is the life of woodworking publishing in the sense that you work on an issue, sometimes several issues at the same time. And when one goes out, you kind of purge it from your memory a little bit because you've been living with it very closely for too long.
Yeah.
And it also blends in with all the other ones that you've done.
It's kind of like cramming for a big test in school. Like you pushed really hard, remembered it all for 24 hours, and then as soon as it's over, dumped it.
Yep. So that was the issue. with my desk in it that I have now been living at for several months. Um, so we have the Craftsman desk in there, kind of traditional stickly style, um, with a little bit of Middle Earth flair thrown into it. Um, there is also, let me think about this. What else? God, what else? I'm gonna have to grab that issue and see.
There was the Moxon Vice was in it.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yep. That's the cover is the Moxon Vice from Albert Klein, and then we also had, what was the third one? I feel like it was a Willie, but maybe it wasn't.
The ShopNotes project.
Oh yeah, we threw ShopNotes project. Yeah, that's what it was. God, thank you. Wow, I have dumped that out of my brain so hard, like ridiculously so. And yeah, I mean, so the Moxon Vice from Albert is a kind of traditional style Moxon Vice, kind of semi handwork, semi machine work on it. He made that one very large. For that one was actually for Shay, whose shop we were shooting that project in. So he wanted a wide enough one to do some like blanket chest sides in it. So that's what that was.
Okay.
The desk we talked about, the workbench sidekick, which is actually in my shop here. It's kind of my lathe bench. It is kind of a small format bench, meant to go, in your shop around your main bench as a secondary work surface. Works really well for that. And I've been using it in here, so I figured that would be a good one to include. Also did an article on doing rabbets by hand. So kind of cutting rabbets with a rabbet plane, whether that is an old style molding. I'm going to say molding plane, even though it's not a molding, a old style wood body rabbet plane, or a modern, and kind of the different approach take with each of those, because the modern one has some bells and whistles that you just need the plane. The vintage wood style, if it is truly a rabbet plane versus a shoulder plane, sometimes does not have a fence. So there's some different ways you can approach long grain and cross grain rabbets. So talk about doing some of those. Also had an article from the Wayback Machine from Bob Flexner, who recently passed away, on doing shellac. I had planned on doing a shellac article in this issue because this desk is finished in shellac. It's finished with Glancy's oil and shellac. And it kind of just worked out as a kind of a tribute to Bob, who had been a longtime contributor, that we pulled that one forward. And then I did a little bespoke maker spotlight on a company called Hillview Tools, who I have several tools from. Tony makes tools out of New York. He is a trained machinist. So, in the machinist world, you often make tools for specific tasks. And Tony kind of rolled that into making woodworking tools. Makes some of the nicest sliding squares, bevel gauges, makes really nice block planes, which I do not own one of those, guys. I had one for this article shoot, though, and it's very nice. So kind of cool to show, a little one-man shop in his home basement machine shop making a bunch of tools. And it's interesting because it's probably the Facebook algorithm now and Instagram. I'm seeing all these shows that Tony's going to. And I'm like, I need to see if we can get a couple of these bespoke makers out here for our Woodworking in America event, because that'd be really cool.
True story.
So, yeah, so that was the last issue. Man, I feel like I'm looking at the files right now. Those were all sent to the printer on March 14th. I feel like that was 3 years ago. For better or for worse, I feel like that is a long time ago, but it's really not.
So let me ask you this question about that issue, because I read the Bob's shellac article.
Yeah.
He took a very curmudgeonly approach in that one.
Yeah, I don't remember how he words it, but shellac, a difficult finish or something like that. Yeah.
So it just kind of came across a little bizarre. But I also know that he did that periodically. It feels like there were some topics that Bob just came back to and pounded on over and over again.
Yeah.
And shellac being one of them. And it was just kind of an interesting, like, why the rage, dude?
So, yeah, I mean, you can email him and ask him, but you might not hear from him.
Yeah.
So Bob kind of, so I had spoken to Bob's brother several months ago and kind of got a little bit about his backstory, because I was not around during, Bob's time of writing for the magazine and stuff. But Bob had kind of started in the finishing world, woodworking world, really, doing a lot of, he was running like a one-man antique restoration and furniture shop. So that's where he got a lot of his finishing knowledge, was just kind of hands-on experience messing around with this stuff. I'm sure he worked with, some finishing manufacturers and whatever, but yeah. So I think some of his curmudgeon-y tendencies are from his experience having to repair these finishes.
Sure.
Which is, is what it is. So,
right.
Yeah.
No, I'm not taking issue. It was just he had interesting approaches on some of his stuff.
Yes.
That, his personal presentation style or whatever, but
yeah.
I was going to say, that sounds like a good section to have in the magazine, maybe like an airing of grievances, or Logan's What Grinds Your Chisels, woodworking therapy, just like, I got a lot of problems with you people, and now you're going to hear about it.
We haven't done a What Grinds Your Chisels episode in a while, so maybe we need to bring that one back.
Yeah, revisit.
We need that. We got a lot of pent-up rage.
All right, so you've lived with your desk for a while now?
Yeah.
Satisfied?
Yeah, I still haven't redone these drawer slides. I hate these stupid bottom mount drawer slides. So like I had started monkeying around with them, trying to flush up drawer fronts. There's just not a lot of adjustments on these. And I got to the point where I just slapped them back together, and they're still a little like haggletooth. This is what I'm calling the South Side desk. They're a little snaggletooth drawer fronts right now. I haven't got the veneers on them yet. But yeah, I love it. The only thing that I would change, and this is just two things, and this is just my own unique situation that I'm in with this desk, is there are times where I wish the knee hole, the spot for your knees, was a little wider, because as I'm pushing a dog's head out of the way, they try to get between my legs and the lander there, which one's a 70-pound dog, one's a 45-pound dog. So if that was a little bit bigger, it'd make it easier for the dogs to get in and out of. That's just me. Once they die, I won't care about that. The other is that even with this little cutout on the front of this door, that cubby of that desk gets really hot. And that's because of the computer I have in there. If you were just doing word processing or whatever, if I'm doing video editing or whatever, it gets pretty warm in there, so I leave that door open. So there may be a time in the near future where I go in there with a reciprocating tool and cut out a couple of the panels in the back. So the back is basically open air, which again is just a function of how I'm using this thing. So if you're using a standard, word processing, web browsing, YouTube type computer, you'd be fine. So yeah, but nope, I like it. Yeah, the other thing that would be good if you did widen out I think the proportions are correct for this knee area. But if you did widen it out, you would gain a little bit of real estate on the keyboard tray, which for most keyboards without a 10 key on them like this one, it works out great. So like a standard Mac keyboard works out really nicely. If you have a larger keyboard with function keys on the side and a 10 key on the right, it's a little snug with the mouse. But for a smaller keyboard, which is what I use, it works out perfect. So yeah.
Yeah, I always find that on a project like that, especially where you've designed it yourself, is there's you try and fit certain parameters into it to what you think will work for a specific use, especially for something like a desk that sees use rather than just kind of an is piece.
Yep.
If that makes sense. And then at some point you kind of live with it, and then you realize like, hey, this worked. This maybe didn't work as well. And then you adapt to it, and then all of a sudden it's just fine.
Yeah. Well, that was the keyboard thing immediately. Yeah. What for me was, okay, proportions are correct. Between left cubby, right drawers, and the knee hole, those proportions look right. But as soon as I brought my desktop from my downstairs office up here and put my keyboard on it, I'm like, ooh, that's a little snug. Yeah. But it's like, well, no problem. I don't use my 10 key on the right hand side. The number pad, for anybody that doesn't know what the 10 key is, the number pad on the right hand side. I don't use that. So I'm like, I'll just order a smaller keyboard. So that's what I did, and no issue.
Right. So would you consider putting an extra fan in your cubby to help cool that?
No.
Just open the door?
If I knock out... So right now, there are 2 1/4-inch panels in the back that are 6 inches wide. I will probably just cut those out. And that should provide enough airflow. To be fair, I have 2 computers in there. It's not one. I have 2. I have a Mac in there. I have my PC in there. So there's a lot of stuff going on.
Right.
It is completely just a function of how and I have not had the air conditioner in this office hooked up. So like on a sunny day, I came in here on Sunday, and it was 96 degrees in this office. Because of the 2 big windows and the sun beating through them. Needless to say, I went out and hooked up the AC in the office.
All right.
So that has also helped a little bit. But yeah, I wouldn't. I did that whole thing in the basement office in the lower cabinets. I did finish for my wife's office. On my side of that desk, I did put a couple of fans and think of like a wall register grate in the side of it to help pull cool air in there. And it just ends up being loud, and it doesn't look the greatest and stuff like that. So no, I think just cutting out the cubbies in the back, or just plopping the computer off to the side. The biggest thing is I just did not want to look at the computer sitting on the floor. I would prefer to have it hidden somewhere.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
So,
yeah. We'll take this opportunity to talk about one of our sponsors for today's episode of the ShopNotes Podcast. Want to say thank you to Titebond. You want a glue that you can trust, and fortunately, Titebond has the glue you need to get the job done with confidence. From interior glues with strong initial tack and short clamp time to exterior glues with exceptional strength and water resistant, look to Titebond, the right glue for your next project. For more information, visit titebond.com. woodsmith.com. So anyway, you were talking about the dresser that you did for the current issue of Woodsmith. And one of the goals for that was like a plywood dresser, but not make it look like a plywood dresser.
Correct. So start with the plywood box and add hardwood from there, using simple joinery to kind of dress it out and not make it look like a plywood box. So that was the goal on that. And when I got that done, it's anything like bedroom. It's like, oh, you did a dresser. Let's, fill out the bedroom suite.
Right.
So we hadn't done a platform bed in a while, so kind of took it from there, I guess. And kind of same thing. Platform beds are usually pretty simple construction. They don't have a footboard. So kind of come up with something that matches with the dresser. The dresser was made out of cherry. So kind of try to use the same materials and same kind of construction techniques and style so it all go together and kind of going from there, I guess. So simple project that somebody could probably build in a weekend or two and have, a decent piece of furniture. So keeping it simple.
Yeah. What I liked about the dresser is the fact that I believe you could put it together relatively quickly. It's not for as big of a project as it is. Mm-hmm. And the way that you addressed the plywoodiness of stuff without resorting to like thin strips of plywood edge or of hardwood edging, which we've done in the past and also works or can work when well designed. But it's the way you edged the plywood was usually with thicker strips or just covered it with legs altogether. And I think it turned out really cool. I just like that approach that you took to it.
Yeah, I think when you just go with the 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch thick edging, it usually just looks like a plywood box with edging on it. So try to use like different thicknesses of materials to make legs and make it look like I have style and rails applied to it. And so went that direction, I guess. So
and I had built a dresser for our house based off of a workbench plan. And again, this is just a design choice, but a lot of times when you have a plywood dresser, things like that, instead of doing like a traditional web frame between drawers, where it's like 4 pieces of wood, sometimes with a thin panel in it, a lot of times in plywood, we try and simplify it by just having solid plywood panels between every drawer or banks of drawers or stuff like that. And the problem with that is that it just ends up weighing 6,000 pounds.
Yeah.
And I get that it adds some strength there, but that's like way overbuilt, in my opinion. But on this one, you ended up just having the dividers, but they're only a few inches wide. It's not the full depth.
Yeah. I ended up going with, roller bearing drawer slides. So you really don't need any like full shelf supports to support drawers or any of that kind of thing. And really the stretchers weren't even necessary. They were more of just kind of a divider decorative type thing. So it's just doesn't look like a bank of drawer fronts and whatnot. So I did that. And even when building a cabinet like that, you don't even need a full top or bottom on it because the top's getting covered up with the solid wood top, and the bottom you never see because it's full of drawers anyways. But it's probably more work to cut strips for the top of the bottom than just use a solid top and bottom. So went that way, and it's not saving that much weight either. So,
Yeah. Anyway, it was just one of those things where this project combined with some of the other recent plywood projects that we've done, I don't know, it feels like we've leveled up our design game with plywood, that it's not just giant panels that you stitch together and then kind of slapdash cover the edges later on, that there's a thoughtfulness in how it gets used and why you're using plywood for certain situations.
Yeah. Yeah, it really helps with the construction time too. Like we said, you could probably build it in a week under two, especially with, I went with Baltic birch plywood drawers. So then you're not spending your time gluing up, wider panels for the case of solid wood or for the drawers or planing stuff down to thickness. You can just cut strips of plywood and go from there. So it really helps, I think, that way. So.
Yeah. I forget, Logan, did you use plywood on your drawer sides, or was it all solid wood?
Solid wood.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't use plywood at Popwood. Just because I hate dealing with it.
Wow.
No, I was gonna say that I didn't realize that it's funny working with everybody for several years. You can kind of pick out whose designs are whose pretty easily. Chris has pretty distinctive design. Dylan has pretty distinctive design. I would have assumed that Chris designed this dresser, to be honest with you. Yeah, I would have.
That's a compliment. I'll take that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But the one thing that I do really like about it, and as you mentioned, John, so projects end up stacking up, right? In our photo studio and video studio. So a lot of times, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, hey, if anybody's interested in this, it's yours. Like, just get it out of here. It's gone. So I was like, oh, that's a good dresser to replace. My youngest had a serpentine front, like an antique serpentine front dresser that had wooden slides on it. And I had refinished, probably 10 years ago, when our oldest was young, and it's at the point where the bottoms aren't staying in with how much clothes are shoved in those drawers, and they're serpentine front, so you gotta cut the curved plywood to get it to fit right and whatever. And he's always pulling the drawers out on his feet because he pulls them out super far and they're very heavy. And I'm like, oh, I like the size of the drawers in this dresser because they're smaller, right? They're not very wide, like maybe 18 inches, maybe a little more than that, maybe 20.
Yeah.
And they're fairly shallow, so the entire dresser is fairly shallow. So for kids' clothes, I can put my stuff in it, but for kids' clothes, this is perfect because it's small clothes, small drawers, easy for them to organize. There's six drawers in it, I think.
Six drawers, yeah.
And I'm like, this works out really nice. But the one little detail that I appreciate and I feel like gets overlooked all the freaking time is that you had the top overhang the whole way around instead of being flush on the back. Flush tops on the back are stupid because you're going to push it up against a wall.
Right.
And then you're going to have a gap where the legs won't go up against the wall because there's trim and baseboard. And then you have this stupid 3/4 inch gap that crap falls in.
Yep. You lose your socks, your little action figures fall back there.
Your Legos,
Legos, yep.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm like, whoever designed this made the top overhang so it actually pushes tight up against the wall. I have it tight up against the wall on two sides. I'm like, kudos to Chris Fitch for designing it this way.
Nope.
It's
me.
Nope.
This
That's
guy.
John.
Who's got two thumbs and overhang all the way around. This guy. Yeah, that is a small detail. And the other thing is I always put in self-closing drawer slides.
Oh, yeah.
Only to keep them closed because we have some dressers that have the drawer slides that are not self-closing, and then like they'll like the edge of the like carpet towards the wall, that's always like a little thicker because they roll it, or the nail strips back there. So the dresser is like just slightly tipped forward, where the drawer might start slowly creeping open, and you're always like going around pushing all the drawers closed and or shimming them up, and so that's the other thing. Or same with carts in the shop. You start wheeling them around, and drawers are flying open.
Yeah.
So self-closing drawer slides, keep them closed.
We've shared our love for the Midwest home center chain called Menards many times on this podcast. And to go to Menards and get self-closing full extension drawer slides is not a lot of money. And they're pretty solid, the drawer slides. I think that they make some decent hardware.
Yep. Yeah, so that's where I got all the drawer slides for the cart that we just built for Logan. So,
good
value. And you're getting 11% back.
Right. Yeah, you're making money at that point.
You're wetting your whistle a little,
Yeah. I mean, the stock market isn't returning 11% right now. So
put your money in Menards, guys.
Yeah, Menards beating the market since 19 whatever.
See, what I don't understand, you go into Menards, Lowe's, Home Depot, insert any big box store. You go to the drawer slide section, right? You have the ball bearing slides.
Right.
10 or $12 for a pair. Then you have the cheap white ones with just the wheel roller.
Yeah.
Who is buying those? Who is cheap enough that they are buying those stupid things to the point where they are still selling them?
I feel like it's the people that have kitchens that were built in the 1970s that have that kind of drawer slide, and then they wear out or break. It's like, well, I got to replace them with the exact same thing, So
and you don't.
They just stay in stock. Yeah.
I'm blaming the boomers for this.
Yep.
All right.
Calling them out.
There we go. Boomer hate.
Yep.
Send in your comments now. I mean, we're already going to raise the ire of folk who think that, full extension slides don't belong on furniture anyway. But to be fair, there's very little that you needed to change on this particular dresser project if you wanted to go with solid wood drawers, like just regular drawer construction.
Yeah. Yeah, Logan, you were talking about how we all kind of have our own design style, and I feel like the same thing, that I can look at them and kind of tell who designed what. And I feel like Chris is kind of the traditional like design guy, traditional elements, and Dylan is kind of more modern and kind of stretches the ideas a little bit. And then I try to be kind of more in the middle, just like, here's something simple you can build, nothing fancy. Like, this is just how to do it. You don't have to, get too crazy. So that's my take on it.
Yeah. Not to give you a big head or anything, John, but it takes a lot to create something that looks good, functions well, and has that simple appeal, though, to it.
Right.
So almost there. Almost got it.
But anyway, so those just a couple of projects that were.
So let me ask this. How much do you think that John, being the one that does a lot of our like parts and stuff as we're working on the show and stuff, how much of that goes in that? Because it's like, if you're just designing something and handing it off to somebody, it's not really your problem anymore, right? Mm-hmm. So like, I'm not saying Chris does that or Dylan does that, but like, hey, this would be kind of cool to do this. I don't have to build it, so here we go. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
Dylan seems to like mitered shit, and
yeah,
he's not the one building it.
Mark Yeah, it gets a little. I feel like gets a little annoyed with Dylan sometimes, because he'll just come up with something new. And it's like, here you go, figure it out. Where like, yeah, I've stressed a lot about on designing stuff, and it's like, well, how would I, if I did it that way, how would I build? Like, how could I do this? And then sometimes it's just like, oh wait, I don't have to, and then you just hand it off. So they'll figure it out. So.
But do you find that your years of experience in trying to interpret other people's designs for project parts for the TV show influences the way you make choices for drawer construction or case assembly or something like that when you're designing projects?
Yeah, I think that's working on the show for the last 18 seasons has definitely affected the way I design stuff. Just knowing and forcing to have to build it the way that somebody else did it in the magazine has kind of taught me different things, but then having to do them, definitely pick out the way I like to do things, or something that I know that has been successful in the past, for a project, this general technique or, worked out for this project. So I know it's going to work for the magazine here, just in the way they draw it or explain it. So yeah, I would say that, it definitely affects the way I design stuff.
All right, cool. Speaking of design, one thing that we have just coming out brand new, probably by the time you hear this, is I'm doing a e-learning course on a shaker-inspired dining table that Chris Fitch designed, and we featured in the magazine. So we're going to do a video workshop course on building it, where we're going to walk through the entire process. It's similar to what we do for the TV show, but doing it as a course, we're able to do much longer discussion on some things, because in the TV show we have 26 minutes to get it out the door, and some things we can cover and some things we can't cover. So on this one, we went a deep dive on it, talked about selecting materials for the top, gluing up humongous top panels like you would for a tabletop, the joinery involved on the trestles, and through mortises and mortise and tenon joints and angled pieces. We even talk about building a bench that goes with the table. And because the bench has such a similar construction style to the table, I use that as an opportunity to riff and try some different techniques that you could also apply to the table, just to show that there are options. So when you're looking at a set of plans and it shows joinery option A, that doesn't mean you have to necessarily go with that one. So you could check that out on our website. I'll put a link to it in the show notes page as well. So there you have it. I think that wraps up another episode of the ShopNotes Podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or smart remarks, we want to hear about them. It's the fuel for our episodes. So please send those to woodsmith@woodsmith.com, or you can put them in the comments section on our YouTube channel, and who knows, your comment might just be read in a future episode, which is both a warning and an invitation. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.